On a mountain in Durango, Mexico, the air was thin, the stakes were high, and one wrong step could cost John Wayne his life. But as Wayne collapsed on set, Dean Martin made a decision that would change everything. What he did next left everyone speechless and defined their bond forever. Where are you watching from? Tell us in the comments. In February 1965, John Wayne and Dean Martin found themselves at 8,500 feet in the Mexican highlands, filming The Sons of Katie Elder. The altitude made breathing difficult for anyone, but for Wayne, just months after undergoing surgery for lung cancer, it was a death sentence. Every breath felt like fire in his lungs. Despite the risks, Wayne refused to back down, determined to finish the film. The crew, led by the experienced director Henry Hathaway, wasn't sure if Wayne could survive the shoot, but they pressed on, unaware that the true test of Wayne's strength would come soon. Dean Martin, his co-star and longtime friend, saw the toll Wayne's body was taking. He wasn't going to let his friend face this fight alone. But when the stakes escalated, Martin's role shifted from co-star to protector, and it was no longer just about finishing a film. It was about saving a life. John Wayne had always been known for his toughness, a symbol of American masculinity. His reputation as an invincible cowboy was legendary. But beneath the tough exterior was a man fighting a brutal battle against cancer. The year before the shoot, he'd lost his left lung to the disease, a diagnosis that should have ended his career. But Wayne was stubborn, refusing to let cancer define him. His decision to continue filming was more than a professional choice. It was personal. Wayne was determined to prove that he was still the Duke, the man who had once brought hope and courage to audiences across the world. But this time, the stakes were far higher. His body was frail, weakened by months of illness, and the mountain air seemed intent on pushing him to his limits. But there was something else, something deeper. Despite the immense pain, Wayne refused to show weakness. His pride, his legacy, and his desire to keep fighting drove him forward. It wasn't just about surviving the shoot. It was about surviving life itself. Dean Martin, on the other hand, had always been the picture of effortless charm. Known for his easy smile and cool demeanor, Martin was a man of contradictions. While the public saw him as a carefree entertainer, the reality was far more complex. Martin, born into a working-class family, was deeply rooted in loyalty and family values. His relationship with Wayne, forged in the 1959 film Rio Bravo, was built on mutual respect. While Wayne was the face of rugged masculinity, Martin's strength lay in his ability to stay calm under pressure, to offer a steady hand when everything seemed to be falling apart. But when the phone rang in the middle of the night with news of Wayne's declining health on set, Martin knew this was his time to show the true depth of their friendship. In a world where appearances meant everything, Martin wasn't afraid to risk his own safety and reputation to protect his friend. He understood that true friendship wasn't just about standing by each other during the good times. It was about being there in the hardest moments, when everything was on the line. By day 2 of filming, it was clear that Wayne's condition was rapidly deteriorating. His breath was ragged, his energy fading with every step. The crew began to whisper, and the tension on set was palpable. Director Henry Hathaway, who had seen many tough situations, pulled Dean Martin aside. "He's not going to make it through this," Hathaway said. "3 more months of this? The insurance company is losing their minds. We might have to shut down production." Martin, normally a man of few words, lit a cigarette and stared at Hathaway. "He'll make it," Martin replied, his voice firm, almost daring Hathaway to doubt him. But the fear was real, and it spread through the crew like wildfire. The insurance company was threatening to pull the plug, suggesting they move the production to a lower elevation or replace Wayne with a younger actor. But Martin refused to accept that. He saw what others didn't. Wayne wasn't just fighting against cancer. He was fighting for his own dignity, and that was something Martin would protect with everything he had. The first major test came on day 4 of the shoot. The crew had prepared for a river scene, a critical sequence where the elder brothers are ambushed while crossing a fast-moving, ice-cold river. On paper, it was a straightforward action sequence, but for Wayne, it was anything but. As he stepped into the river, the cold hit him like a freight train. His body, already weakened by the altitude and his surgery, went into shock. His hands trembled uncontrollably, and his breath came in sharp, painful gasps. Martin watched from the shore, his heart sinking. He had seen Wayne push through pain before, but this time, something felt different. The Duke wasn't just acting through pain. He was struggling to stay alive. It wasn't just the physical pain of the cold water. It was the emotional weight of it all. Wayne was fighting not only to survive this film, but to prove to the world, and to himself, that he was still the man he once was. As Wayne fought to stay afloat, Martin made a split-second decision. Without hesitation, he plunged into the freezing water, moving swiftly toward his friend. He knew this wasn't just a stunt anymore. This was real. He had to be there. The cold was brutal, far worse than anyone had anticipated. As Martin reached Wayne, he saw the color drain from his friend's face. The Duke's lips had turned blue, his body shaking violently. Martin grabbed Wayne, pulling him towards the rocks, using his own body as a shield against the current. For a brief moment, the cameras and the production crew disappeared. It was just the two of them, struggling to survive against the forces of nature. Martin, usually the cool, collected entertainer, was now entirely focused on one thing: keeping Wayne alive. Every moment felt like an eternity. The crew had been instructed to keep shooting, but this wasn't acting anymore. The fear in Wayne's eyes was real, the tremors in his body genuine. Martin kept his face calm, but inside, he was panicking. What if they didn't make it out of the water? What if this was the moment where everything ended? But as the camera rolled, Wayne, ever the professional, kept going. He tried to act through the pain, but it was clear. The physical toll of the cold water and the altitude was too much. Martin continued to help him, shielding him from the worst of the current, and making sure his friend stayed afloat, no matter what. The crew had been watching from the shore, anxiously waiting for the signal to call cut. But what they didn't know was that Martin was not just acting as a co-star. He was acting as a protector. When the scene finally ended, Wayne collapsed, exhausted and unable to stand. Martin, with surprising strength, helped him out of the water and carried him to safety. As the crew rushed to Wayne's side, blankets and hot drinks in hand, Martin stood by, his jaw clenched. He had done what he promised. He had kept his brother alive. But as they prepared to continue filming, a heated exchange broke out between Martin and the director. Henry Hathaway, visibly shaken, approached Martin. "Dean, we need to shut it down. He's too sick for this. You know it, I know it." Martin's eyes burned with frustration, but he remained calm. "You don't get it, Henry. The Duke's not just any actor. He's not quitting, not now. And neither am I. We finish this film, and we finish it right. No one is leaving here until we do." The exchange between Martin and Hathaway caught the attention of the cast and crew. It was a rare moment of vulnerability for Martin, a man who had built a career on charm and humor, not confrontation. But in that moment, Martin's quiet strength became undeniable. He wasn't just defending Wayne's decision to keep going. He was defending their bond. His words held power. The crew, once unsure, began to rally behind Wayne. The whispers of doubt faded, and the energy on set shifted. They weren't just working on a movie anymore. They were witnessing an act of bravery, one that transcended Hollywood. As the scene wrapped up, the crew found themselves with a newfound respect for both men. They had pushed through together, refusing to let anything, not even death, stop them from finishing what they started. But what happened next would solidify their place in Hollywood history. It wasn't just about the scene in the river. It was about what they learned about loyalty, friendship, and the human spirit. Martin had stepped up when it mattered most, and in doing so, he had earned his place in the legendary story of the sons of Katie Elder. As the days passed, the tension continued to mount. John Wayne's health was a constant worry. Despite Martin's unwavering support, it was clear that the strain of filming at such high altitudes was taking a toll on the Duke's body. Each morning, Wayne's breathing was more labored, and his energy levels were visibly dropping. The crew, though supportive, could see the reality of the situation. Wayne was fighting a losing battle. Even the studio executives were beginning to lose faith in the production. Calls from Paramount's legal team and the insurance company became more frequent. The word "shut down" was whispered more often, and there were serious discussions about bringing in a younger actor to replace Wayne. But Martin wasn't going to let that happen. He had seen firsthand how hard Wayne was fighting to prove he was still the Duke. To him, it wasn't just about completing a film. It was about preserving Wayne's legacy, the legacy of a man who had inspired millions. Martin's role now went beyond being a co-star. He was the linchpin holding this production together. But there was only so much he could do to protect his friend. The pressure was mounting, and with every passing day, the possibility of a fatal mistake loomed larger. It was the night before the most dangerous scene of the shoot, a sequence where Wayne's character had to leap into the freezing river during an ambush. As the temperature dropped, Martin couldn't sleep. He lay in his trailer, smoking cigarette after cigarette, running through the possibilities in his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that the next day's stunt could be the end of his friend. Martin knew Wayne's stubbornness all too well. The Duke had insisted from day one that he would do his own stunts, despite the warnings. And now, with his health in jeopardy, it seemed like a suicide mission. Martin couldn't stand the thought of losing Wayne on set, so he made a decision. He quietly got up, walked to Wayne's trailer, and knocked softly. When Wayne opened the door, he looked as if he hadn't slept at all. "Figured you'd show up," Wayne said, as if he had been expecting it. Martin stepped inside. "Duke, tomorrow's scene. Let me go first. I'll test the water. If it's too cold, we shut it down." Wayne looked at him, his face serious. "No, Dino. I'm the lead. I do it." But Martin wasn't backing down. "You want to do it? Fine. But I'm jumping right after you. I'll be right there in the water with you. And if you go under, I'm pulling you out. No discussion. Non-negotiable." Wayne stared at him for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. "You're a pain in the ass, you know that?" Martin smiled. "Yeah, but you're stuck with me, Duke." The morning of the river scene arrived with an unspoken tension in the air. The crew was on edge, aware that the risk had never been higher. As they set up, the cold winds and the rising sun seemed to mock the heat of the desert that lay just a few miles away. The water, fed by mountain snowmelt, was frigid, dangerously so. The stunt doubles, young and fit, had already tested the water. They were shivering, their bodies almost unrecognizable in the icy current. But Wayne refused to back down. "No doubles," he insisted. "I'm doing the scene. If I go down, I'll go down doing it myself." The crew was visibly nervous, and Henry Hathaway, the director, tried once again to convince Wayne to reconsider. "Duke, this isn't about your pride. It's about your life." But Wayne, as determined as ever, wasn't hearing it. He took his place at the edge of the river, ready to perform the stunt himself. Dean Martin, true to his word, positioned himself close, just a few feet away. "I'm right behind you," he called. "You go in, I'm going in after you. No questions." The crew stood by in silence, watching the two men. What had begun as a film shoot was now a life-or-death moment. There was no going back. As the cameras rolled, Wayne led the charge. He rode his horse into the river, and the freezing water immediately seized his body. He struggled against the current, his single lung already working overtime in the thin mountain air. His hands shook, his body convulsed with cold, but he pushed on, determined to finish the scene. Martin followed immediately, jumping into the river right after him. The cold hit him like a shockwave, but he didn't flinch. He focused solely on Wayne, staying close to him, shielding him from the worst of the current. They were in this together. When Wayne faltered, Martin was right there, his hand gripping Wayne's arm, pulling him forward. The cameras captured the raw emotion, the real struggle. This wasn't just a performance. This was life. After what seemed like an eternity, the director called for a cut. The crew rushed forward, blankets and hot coffee in hand. But Wayne wasn't done. "Let's do it again," he insisted. Martin, visibly shaken but unwavering, stood firm. "That's it for today, Duke. You're done. We're done." Wayne, drenched and shivering, tried to protest, but Martin wasn't having it. He half-carried, half-dragged his friend away from the water. The set was silent. Dean Martin had just saved John Wayne's life, and in doing so, had solidified their place in Hollywood history. As Wayne and Martin made their way to the medical tent, the atmosphere on set had shifted. No one spoke. The usual banter that had filled the air was now replaced by a heavy silence. It was clear to everyone that what had just happened went far beyond the film. Wayne, despite his tough exterior, had been pushed to his limit. The crew could see it now. This wasn't just about making a movie. This was about survival. The moment the medical team checked Wayne's vitals, they made it clear. He was dangerously close to succumbing to hypothermia. The temperature had been far colder than anyone had anticipated, and Wayne's body was barely holding on. Yet, despite the warnings, Wayne insisted that they continue filming. But it wasn't just Wayne who was defiant. Dean Martin, ever the protector, stood by him unwaveringly. When Hathaway finally approached, he could see the tension written on every crew member's face. The director knew that the scene had pushed both men beyond what was humanly possible. But surprisingly, it wasn't Hathaway's objections that caused the most tension. It was the silent anger of the crew. They had all witnessed what had happened. They had seen the risk, the reckless bravery, and the undeniable bond between Wayne and Martin. And now, they had to decide whether they would continue to put them in harm's way for the sake of a film. "We can't do this anymore," one crew member whispered to another. It wasn't just fear for their own safety. It was concern for the lives of the two men they had watched fight so hard. Back in the safety of their trailers, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. Wayne, still exhausted, sat down heavily on the edge of his bed, his breathing labored. Martin entered quietly, his expression unreadable. For a moment, neither man spoke. The silence between them was thick, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Wayne, who had never been one to show vulnerability, finally broke the quiet. "Dino, you didn't have to do that," he said, his voice rough from the cold. "I didn't ask you to jump in after me." Martin took a long drag from his cigarette, his eyes never leaving Wayne. "I didn't do it for you, Duke. I did it for us. For this film. For what we've built together." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "You taught me something. I'm not just the Rat Pack clown. I can handle the hard stuff. I've got your back, just like you've got mine." Wayne nodded slowly, the weight of the moment settling on him. "You saved my life today, Dino. I didn't think I'd make it out of that water. I owe you everything." Martin's face softened, and he placed a hand on Wayne's shoulder. "We're brothers, Duke. We stick together, no matter what." And in that moment, the true strength of their bond became clear. It wasn't just about making a movie. It was about loyalty, sacrifice, and the kind of friendship that could survive even the harshest trials. As the hours passed, the emotional weight of the day began to take its toll. Wayne, normally the stoic figure of Hollywood, found himself humbled by the experience. He had always prided himself on being able to handle any challenge, but today had proven otherwise. The cold had seeped into his bones, and the reality of his condition was undeniable. But in the presence of Dean Martin, he found something he hadn't realized he'd been missing: the power of true brotherhood. The kind of friendship that wasn't about the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, but about showing up when it mattered most. "I've faced wars, gunfights, and every kind of danger," Wayne confessed, "but I've never been more scared than I was today. And I didn't think I could do it. Not without you." Martin's expression softened, and he gave Wayne a reassuring smile. "I knew you'd pull through, Duke, but we do it together always." They sat there in silence, the weight of their shared experience heavy in the air, but it was a silence that spoke volumes. This wasn't just a movie set. This was where their brotherhood was forged in fire. The bond that had been solidified in that freezing river was something no amount of fame or success could ever replace. It was something real, something that would stay with them for the rest of their lives. As the production continued, the news of what had happened on that riverbank spread throughout the set and beyond. In Hollywood, stories like this didn't always make it to the public eye. But this one did. When the footage from the river scene was shown to the higher-ups at Paramount, it was clear that something extraordinary had happened. The intensity in Wayne's eyes wasn't acting, it was real fear. And the way Martin jumped in without hesitation spoke volumes about their friendship. Soon, the story of Wayne's near-death experience and Martin's role in saving him became legendary. The media, always hungry for a story, latched onto the narrative of two Hollywood icons facing down death together. The audience saw a glimpse of something more profound than just a movie. They saw two men willing to risk it all for each other. And when the film was released in 1965, The Sons of Katie Elder was an immediate success, earning over $12 million at the box office. But what truly stood out wasn't just the success of the film. It was the undeniable chemistry between Wayne and Martin. Critics called it one of the most genuine on-screen relationships in Hollywood history. They couldn't know the truth behind that bond, but the public felt it, and it resonated with them on a level far deeper than just entertainment. As the film's success continued to soar, the story of the river scene remained a whispered legend among those who were there. The tension on set, once palpable, had dissipated in the wake of Martin's bold stand. But what truly solidified their bond was how the production crew rallied around them after that day. The young actors and crew members, who had initially whispered doubts about Wayne's ability to finish the shoot, began to see him not just as a star, but as a man, flawed, vulnerable, but unstoppable when surrounded by loyalty. The respect for Martin, who had stood firm in the face of all pressure, deepened. He wasn't just a smooth, charming entertainer anymore. He was the embodiment of unwavering loyalty, of brotherhood forged in fire. And when the film's final cut was ready, the chemistry between Wayne and Martin stood as the heart of The Sons of Katie Elder. It was raw, real, and undeniably powerful. The critics praised the authenticity of their relationship on screen, calling it one of the most genuine portrayals of male camaraderie ever captured. The public may have seen two legendary actors giving their all for a film, but the crew and those closest to them knew the real story. It was a tale of survival, loyalty, and a friendship that had been tested to its very limits. Years later, when asked about The Sons of Katie Elder, both Wayne and Martin would reflect on the production not as the making of a classic Western, but as a personal victory. For Wayne, it was about proving to himself, and to the world, that he was still capable of great things, even after cancer. But it was also about something more profound. It was about finding a brother in a world that could sometimes feel lonely and cold. For Martin, it was a moment of personal redemption. He had spent years doubting himself, questioning his worth as an actor. But through his friendship with Wayne, he had found his true strength. The river scene had been more than just a physical test. It had been a test of character. And Martin had passed. He had learned that real strength wasn't about being invincible. It was about being there when your friend needed you the most. That moment of near death on the riverbank was not just a test of survival. It was a testament to their unwavering commitment to each other. It was a bond that would last far beyond the final shot of the film, etched into the hearts of both men for the rest of their lives. When the film was finally released, it became a massive success. But the true legacy of The Sons of Katie Elder wasn't just in its box office numbers. It was in the unspoken understanding between the two leading men. The film portrayed their characters as brothers, but off-screen, their bond was something far deeper. Audiences may not have known the truth behind the scenes, but they felt it. The authenticity of Wayne's and Martin's performances resonated with viewers, who saw a connection on screen that felt real. Critics praised the film not just for its action, but for the emotional depth of the relationship between the two men. What they didn't know was that the chemistry between Wayne and Martin was not just acting. It was the product of a friendship that had been forged in the crucible of danger and sacrifice. The story of that river scene, and the loyalty Martin showed Wayne in his time of need, became a part of Hollywood lore. But more than that, it became a testament to the power of true friendship, the kind of bond that can't be broken by fame, fortune, or even death. In the years that followed, the story of Wayne and Martin's river scene spread far beyond the set of The Sons of Katie Elder. It became a symbol of what true friendship looked like, a bond that transcended the glitz of Hollywood, forged in the cold, harsh reality of life-or-death situations. As both men continued to work, their friendship remained a cornerstone of their lives. Martin, in particular, would often reflect on that day in Durango, calling it the defining moment of his career. "Day 4 in Durango," he would say, "when Duke needed me, and I was there. That's the moment I'll remember when everything else fades." And in the quiet moments of reflection, Wayne would admit that, without Martin's intervention, he may never have made it through the shoot, or perhaps even the years that followed. Their story, once confined to the set of a Western, became a legend of its own. It reminded people everywhere that real strength isn't about being invincible. It's about showing up for the people who matter, no matter what. True brotherhood isn't about having the power to do everything on your own. It's about having someone by your side, ready to jump into the freezing water when you need them the most. That's what made John Wayne and Dean Martin not just legends of Hollywood, but legends of friendship. What do you think of the bond between John Wayne and Dean Martin? Have you ever had a friendship tested like theirs? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more legendary tales of Hollywood brotherhood and courage. Thanks for watching.